Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. It's hot in here, isn't it? It's all that kind of Gallic desire, I think, in the first half. So I'm going to tap into that a little bit, I suppose, in the sense that Petrarch wrote most of his sonnets down around Avignon. He didn't write them all there, he wrote some in Italy, different bits of Italy. I'm going to read only from this book this evening. 317 Petrarch sonnets. I think we should finish by about 5:30 in the morning. We'll have breakfast together. How's that? Okay, this is the fourth of Petrarch's sonnets. I might say a little bit about them as I crack on, but let's just start with a poem. The universe explores its possibilities, whether you like it or not, nosing up every crack and atom. X and Y making curry at 3 in the morning. You can have it for lunch in Hunstanton, with Italian wine and a yard of Swiss roll. No one's going back to work now, not with the Canaries 2-0 down. You can understand why so many gods chose the Middle East instead of Norfolk. Boiled the pots and kept chucking in chickens. And whatever anybody thinks they've learned, they still review their options when they see her stroll past the bookies. Yeah, so Petrarch wrote all these poems to Laura, and there's been a lot of chat about, whether she existed or whether he saw her once, and whether she just becomes then a figure like a symbol. He often talks about her as the laurel, there's the whole thing about the tree, the shrub, the greenery, the regrowth, the regeneration. And she dies about halfway through the sequence, and then becomes a kind of Beatrice kind of figure, like for Dante, and the symbol of that which can be hoped for, of idealism, I guess. But not in this one, which is number 13. Io mi rivolgo indietro a ciascun passo, moonwalking to the edge of the abyss, a 6-foot bruise wrapped around hollow bone. I wish I'd never met you, cancel that, or the very air that flows through my flute. And the great wide world of sweet peas and cake, regional cuisines and impulsive dogs, the love that fleeting life can never hold, launches its flock of spasms in the heart. And then I pace around myself, wondering how this weird batch of organs can exist, remote from the reason for its being, but it's love itself which gives the answer. That love and the extension of love's song are free from the banality of time. So, I made a few changes from the original, but one thing that I wanted to, just in case it's not obvious, each of these is a kind of 14-line poem, and each line has 10 syllables, and it's in that, quatrain type thing, tercet. So there is some not taking the piss involved. It's trying to tap in, actually, at least once in every poem to something central to Petrarch's concerns. I thought this one might go down well in Manchester. Number 20. Se l'onorata fronde che prescrive. I don't understand why you're asking me to send my work to yet another new online London garden party with wine, daft fonts, and a space full of nibbles. I've never won the Garibaldi Prize, been nominated for the Ritz Award, had even a sniff of that backwards thing, or been put in or up for a bourbon. You'd be better off amongst the in crowd, those cooing over fleeting fads, who think Bardic is a bleach for cleaning toilets. Go and ask the hacks and novelty acts, whose only conception of the laurels is a fucking gastropub in Putney. So Petrarch's original is somebody writes to him and asks for poems. He says he wants a poem for someone, I don't know why. And Petrarch gets all kind of, well, I don't know whether I can actually. No, nobody's paying very much attention to me and my work at the moment, and I don't know, go and ask them, you know, whoever's just been given a new hat or something, or Tesco, and gets all kind of, you know, huffy around. And then, of course, he writes the poem and sends it to the guy. This is number 25. The closer I come to my own dead end, one crate of pain, return to sender, the more I feel time stuttering to a halt, dusting the void with rusted flecks of hope. As when some happy camper in flip-flops carries 4 cornettos down the cliff path, ending up lost on a hot beach with 2 hands superglued into permanent fists by the melted residue of pleasure and ducking a jiggling halo of wasps. We are steeped in the futility's juices. We wallow in oceans of emotion from which we learn nothing as it turns cold, the tide goes out, and daylight starts to fade. One of the things I did with the Petrarch was to move its kind of locations from Avignon in Italy to northwest Norfolk. I thought that would be a good idea. So the epicentre of these poems is Hunstanton Fun Fair, essentially, which comes back in at certain times. But not in this one, really. This is more to do with the Norfolk coast. I love the original. The solo e pensoso e più deserti campi. I walk that lonesome road until it ends in scabby paddocks rank with thistle, vacancies of unregarded salt marsh, and hissing shingle slopes down to the sea. This is how I steer clear of the locals, plus lost doggers and ornithologists, who could easily feel the mad heat beats below the pallid surface of my skin, which is essentially what the sky does, not to mention the haunted heaths and beaches, saline meres and eerie headlands. But however bleak and God-forsaken this place is, however wild and goosebumped, I never find myself distant from love. This one, first line is, Si io credessi per morte essere scarico, if I thought that death could set me free. If I believed that death could set me free from this unwinding universe of love, I'd connect the exhaust to my snorkel and let the garage door crash down for good. But you're never certain which dimension you'll wake up in these days, what with daily upgrades to the laws of physics and cars running on healthy chip fat fuel. You might just come to in intensive care, exhausted and clinically obese, wired up to NHS word for Windows. Better to let the tug of war go on between amour and the forces of death. Guess who they're using instead of a rope? 30. Bear Grylls agrees. Just as a waterproof, lightweight two-man tent with integrated mozzie net and sewn-in ground sheet is not the best location for a bonfire, so the world cannot accommodate my love. All this pastoral and man-made clutter will camouflage the object of my heart, and all these wardens form a human shield that will bang on about morality, reality TV, and aliens who oblige us to blow up their children. For fuck's sake, all I want is to hold her, safe from the world, caressed by starlight, face down in the Book of Revelations. So it's kind of difficult to represent this sequence in these extracts, because there are all these themes and images, constellations and imagery which go underground and then come back up again. So the only way you'll get that is to buy this book. As luck will have it, there's many copies. I think we got away with that. Nobody noticed. Okay, 37. After I'd invented mountaineering, and then the Dark Ages, I decided I'd try my hand at making up the South, ready for the rise of the bourgeoisie. First stare at an image in a mirror, become entangled in bright absences, banished to flat-pack oblivion at the back of some suburban warehouse. You add label after label until you've made a 3D papier-mâché robot programmed by the Murdochs. Then you end up addicted to updates, each vacancy replacing another as your blood turns slowly into water. Even from afar, she charred my eyes into suspect barbecue remainders, so anything close up and personal was bound to blast my fundamentals. And that's the reason for mythology. By evoking transmogrification, it reminds us irreversible change will be coming round the mountain when she comes. I've turned into my own strange surroundings and an ark full of animals waiting for rain to stop and a glimpse of dry land. I've been turning into little wooden statues. I have swallowed lifetimes of distance, but now pause to look back out and burn. Era noi capei d'oro e lauras arsi. Playing with the name of Laura again, and dawn, and the aura, and stuff like that. A deft breeze, slightly lifted, surprising qualities of fair hair woven with light from her eyes, extensive swathes of elsewhere, via memory into now where she is not. To be forgotten is the fate of all living creatures, hint at the angelic whose harmonizing language equals silence, echoes in dark chambers of our hearts. And if I say she moved like Bill Evans played, you'll hear the subtlest of accompaniments which complement the voices of the world, where weird late sun slants downwards through storm clouds, out over a desolate valley road. We too will soon walk unaccompanied. Just have some tea. So in this poem, which is number 83, Petrarch is writing to, who's he writing to? Malatesta, the Lord of Rimini, trying to get a gig. And he's basically saying, your best bet is to get me to write something marvellous and which you will be remembered by, instead of getting someone to daub a picture of you or to carve a statue, which, you know, probably won't go well anyway. Just give the money to me, man. Rather than knock up another statue to be ruined by pigeons and spray paint, as well as acid rain and student pranks that might leave you brandishing a dildo, you'd be better off encouraging me to write about how wonderful you are, how you're the perfect Lord of Rimini to be lauded through all eternity, like Malatesta's Carnival of Blood, 1973, for long thought lost, winner of the Grandma's Attic Award, and the Eerie Horror Film Festival, and another illustration of how no one escapes from the tunnel of love. This is number 98, this is a bit difficult to read. All the poetic snow-clone detritus sprinkles the jelly mould anthologies and chilled creative writing nurseries in which silence is golden gets knocked off the top of the charts by a whiter shade of pale, followed by all you need is love or one thing, but this is an obsession content in erect, deconsecrated chambers and such privatised workings of the heart, boarded up and out of bounds until spring and inspiration shake hands with the means of production, values, pedestrian walls and precincts. Baby, it's cold outside. Okay. Petrarch had this another obsession to get the papacy back from Avignon to Rome, where it belonged in his view. So he was very, very critical of the contemporary church and many of its manifestations. Pondering these Mussolini millions which blacken and fatten the Vatican, I tune into Neolithic bishops and raise a grizzled eyebrow to heaven. Even the slightest internal earthquake, such as this one occasioned by breathing, turns that patch of stained glass window into the thinnest slip of wine gum on her tongue. Rosie Leday sings, "Eat my poussière." The smell of haddock drifts back down the street, where the Merlot hums for me and my girl. In poetry meetings, I guess the clerks are talking about the death of the eye. Can't help it if I'm still in love with you. And this poem I would like to dedicate to the British electorate. Millionaires guffaw across the chamber, relishing another little triumph of the people's will to be directed by mental epidemics of the right. In the Perpendicular Gothic style, reopened by the King in October 1950, when Walter de la Mare is publishing his Inward Companion and Charles Olsenarian projected verse, while religions continue to distract us from the just and the mysterious. See the ends of all the answers streaming out into the future night and growing distant from our mouths and from each other. Funny how some things don't change even after 600 odd years. Actually, I'm going to skip that. Whenever she whispers through my embers, archaic breezes from the dawn of time revive and articulate my habit, singing silence into composition. I wonder if there's time to learn German, or paraphrase music of the future, such as Messiaen's Avignon bushes teeming with the finches of Our Lady, whose hair curls back around imagined keys to a new and unimagined music which could lift us off the branches of time and place which once imprisoned her presence, delicate as the egg of a gold's crest, I carry forever under my tongue. Okay, we have reached 128. Passi sparsi o pensieri vaghi e pronti. I wandered bony as a cod, throwing back on misplaced oceanic tendencies. Several loads of wool arrive from England as I wiggle my way up the Arno towards another afternoon of Gluck. I should send her one of those messages that never arrive or arrive too late or precipitate the final crisis. Amongst all the posing and the corruption, 3 pigeons are eating 1 cornetto with what looks a lot like civility. I write down eternity addressed to my Madonna of the pomegranate, although she hates it when I call her that. This sounds like another post-election special. Walk in local darkness, hearing nothing except the distant tinkle of the rich. The rest of us stare into burning sticks till our eyes begin to itch and tingle. The nymph Callisto prowls the April night, shifting her weight from paw to monstrous paw, her body made of empty space and stars, paraded as a banner for all those invisible victims of deception, twice scorned by the temporary powers, as eyesores on the edge of their estates. Best to write out nights like this in charcoal, best to sing an unaccompanied song, best to speak through a mouthful of thistles. This is an odd poem that Petrarch sets up this vibe which goes dolce, dolce, sweet, 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 dolce ire, dolci stegni, dolci pace, and carries on. Sweet dreams are made of this, sweet child of mine, sweet home Alabama, sweet Caroline, the sweet spot located in the valley of sweet water and the lyric river, bearing every version of Sweet Jane, through Shelley to Lou and cowboy junkies, onwards to unimaginable times in which we're still achieving sweet fuck all, but humming these mellifluous laments inspired by horrible costume dramas, stabbed by ads for banks and duff merchandise. Yet anyone who ever had a heart exhibits resistance to a system still gorging on the innards of us all. Okay, we're on the home straight. Which is just as well because the tea's run out. 188. Sulla fede amorosa un cor non finto. If I can keep my head when all around lovers lunge at each other's attributes, queue up for more Q8 chrysanthemums and gift wrap inventive new vibrators, and if a face can launch 1,000 ships, then why does she insist on sinking mine? Not to mention her habit of slipping through the strings of my acrobatic kite. If I were a carpenter, I'd knock up a wooden horse to park in your garden. And if I can't have you, I don't want no. If I were a boy, I'd do it again. I swear I wouldn't be a better man. If you're happy and you know it, fuck off. I'll change that last line a bit from the original. 284. L'ultimo lasso dei miei giorni allegri. The last of my happy days are gone forever, says God. I've never even had a happy meal, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. These days, any interludes of sunlight transform my inner organs into slush, prompting health and safety speculations of a largely metaphysical kind, while in my intestines the infant Hercules continues to strangle snakes. Astrophysics helps me to come to terms with her translation to the worm-infested dozen floors of heaven through which stars stare, blinking as the dancers slowly circle. And you know how you can't hear the music? Actually, I don't get astrophysics. I should perhaps have said that by this stage, Laura's dead. You may have noticed that. I'm going to read two more. The sky smells of sodden paths through autumn. Legislation arranging the wagons into tighter and more exclusive rings in the name of the abstract and the holy. Walking is an inexpensive pastime, although the cost of fuel keeps going up. A glass of beer, a bit of bread and cheese. Our probe has now left the solar system. No information is available. My mind maps are losing definition. The time has come for a good declutter. The time has come for running on empty. Fortunately, it's all downhill from here. I'm writing by the light of her dead star. And to finish off, I'm going to read the last poem of the whole thing. So it's the last of Petrarch's sonnets. It's also the last poem in the Canzoniere, from which the sonnets come, with 366 pieces. Vivo piangendo I miei passati tempi. You're bound to have a few regrets about the earlier instalments, but it's best not to overdub the live recordings. Try to learn a lesson from the monkeys. As Delia and Aristotle said, you can't put fruit cocktail in a jelly once it's set. So let what's left of your head resume its bobbing journey downstream, keeping an eye out for wit and beauty and the big-heartedness of the many, and the slick depredations of the few, whose structures and embedded assumptions need to be dismantled and washed away for the living and for the life to come.